I definitely forgot to put earrings on. Oh well. Hey guys, let's talk about books. If you are somebody who pays attention to my channel, you'll notice that I didn't upload a video last week. And if you are not someone who pays attention, or if you're new here, then you will not have noticed and it won't bother you at all. I had nothing to say. I'm going on with the same 2 books as I have been going on with, and nothing exciting happened. So what's the point in making a video to say, hi guys, nothing happened? This week is more of the same. I have been, it's a busy time of the year. And so when I've come home, I've been doing work things because I started a business and that was dumb. So when I have free time in the mornings before I go to my, paid employment, I've been playing Fallout 4 instead of doing anything useful, because that's my coping mechanism when I'm very busy and very stressed, is to shoot super mutants. And so that's what I've been doing, and it's been a whole bunch of fun. But I have been slowly getting through the books I was reading, which is these 2 still. Papyrus by Irene Vallejo, translated by Charlotte Whittle. This is about the invention of books in the ancient world. Now, I don't know if it's because I'm reading this as I'm falling asleep every evening, but I don't understand the point of the author in her digressions and stories and tangents a lot of the time. There's a lot of, it's interspersed with autobiographical moments about books and how she came to books and be a lover of books, and she's a classicist. And so how all this is interesting to her. And it started out with Alexandria. Well, it started out with, here's the Library of Alexandria, and here's how we got the library in Alexandria. Here's how we got Alexandria. Here's how we got Alexander. So giving context in that way. But the part that I've been reading the last couple of nights is about the foundation of Rome. So we've moved on from the Macedonians conquering the world and creating the Hellenic Empire, and now we've gone to the Roman Empire and how Rome just kind of stole everything and wanted, including Greek culture. And then how we're moving from Greek literature, but literature written in Greek, to literature written in Latin, and more of a Roman culture than a Greek culture. But to get there, there was a lot of backstory about the founding of Rome and the atrocities of Rome, and it was a really long time before we got back to books. And I guess context is good, but also I was like, where are you going with this story? It was kind of interesting. I'm not an ancient historian. I'm not particularly drawn to learn about ancient history in any way. So I was kind of like, move along. But we're back to books now. So I would say this bookmark is lying. I would say I'm about 50% of the way through. And it's incredibly readable. I'll give you that. So I'm continuing. I've definitely learned things about Rome not related to books. And we proceed. Oh, there was an interesting digression about Plato. It was in the context of, well, the context was given of rewriting books to remove their context. So things like Huckleberry Finn, removing certain words and replacing them with other words for a more modern audience. And that has definitely happened with Roald Dahl recently too, hasn't it? Or it was announced, I don't know if it actually happened. In that context of changing a book for modern sensibilities, Plato's saying that books should be censored, the ideas within books should be restricted, and basically the only book that people should read is Plato's book. Yeah, so it's in the Republic, which is obviously, well, maybe not obviously, Plato wrote a book called The Republic, which was describing his utopia. And he asserts, I'm just reading straight from this book now, Plato asserts that in an ideal society, education should above all instill seriousness, decorum, and bravery. Plato supports strict censorship of the literature young people read and the music to which they listen. Mothers and nannies should only tell children authorized stories, and even childhood games should be subject to rules. Homer and Hesiod, who are like Homer, the Iliad in particular, is a book that has come to us through millennia for a reason. But Plato says they must be prohibited as childhood reading for several reasons. First, the representation of frivolous hedonistic gods who are prone to bad behavior is not sufficiently edifying. Young people must be taught that evil never comes from the gods. Second, certain lines by both of these poets speak of fear of death, something that troubles Plato, since in his opinion, youths should be ready to die in battle without complaint. So basically, even Plato, who's a Greek philosopher and writer, is saying let's censor the things that people read. So that was interesting, especially given our modern times. It's definitely always been the case. And even in Australia at the moment, where the government is trying to implement a social media ban for people under 16, what the fuck? It has always been that way. I'm slowly getting through midnight in Chernobyl. I did take a break for a long time because my audio time is the same time as my shooting Super Mutants time. But yesterday I had some time in the car to listen to it. Although I had my daughter in the car. She's 16, and so of course she doesn't talk to me. She had her music going and I had the book going on the car stereo. I had to pause it and be like, what the fuck? And tell her what happened. Be like, what the fuck? So we're at the point reactor 4 has imploded, exploded, whatever happened to it. And so this is the aftermath. It's a couple of weeks after. And it's talking about how some like wireless bulldozers were brought in to help push the radioactive material back towards reactor 4 and the special zone, they call it, which is like the biggest concentration of the radioactive fallout. And so, but of course the wireless failed because of the radioactivity of the area. So then they decided, in true Russian style, they're just going to cover it with concrete and that'll fix the problem. So they pour concrete over this area, but the radioactivity is like immediately makes the concrete boil, and then soon like gazes of radioactive concrete is shooting up out of the area. And I was like, what the fuck were they thinking? What? And then they decided to remove just the topsoil where like all the radioactive sediment has deposited. So men are out there with shovels shoveling up this radioactive material in just army fatigues and a respirator. What the fuck? So at this point, I can see now, like at the start, I was like, yeah, this bad thing happened and nobody wanted to admit how bad it is. But now everybody knows how bad it is and they're still making really, really, in hindsight, fucking stupid decisions. And some of it is really, like all of it is tragic, but some of it hits harder than other parts. Like obviously those men are going to die of radiation sickness or at least be severely ill. But then the government set a limit of how much annual exposure men, and it's of course men, could have to radiation at 25 Roentgen, which is pretty high because often radiation exposure is measured in milliroentgen. And so some of the activities that they need to do for the cleanup would expose somebody to the 25 Roentgen in 2 minutes. And that's the annual exposure. And so then they'd have to cycle through men at a rapid pace to complete these tasks because they'd hit their exposure limit, but the task still needs doing. And the book made the point of a task that might take half an hour would instead take 30 men at a minute each. And of course, you've got to have the logistics of one getting in, one getting out, stopping the task and then re-picking up the task, whatever the task is. And some people just decided, like some people in charge just decided that why don't you just reuse the same men and then they'll have maximum, like over maximum exposure and they'll die. But you haven't used up all your resources. You've just used this amount of resources. But when those resources are literal people, that's disgusting and shocking and not surprising, actually. But yeah, in the car yesterday, there was a lot of what the fuck. That's where we are at with Midnight in Chernobyl. Sorry, I didn't say that part. Midnight in Chernobyl by Adam Higginbotham, which is about the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. I bought a book this week on a Kindle deal. It's the second one after this one. This is Shadow of the Gods by John Quinn, and it's the first in a trilogy, the third of which just was released. It's called the Bloodborne Saga? Bloodsworn Saga. This book was gifted to me, and then it ended up being a pick for a book club. So I started it, and then I just kind of forgot that I was reading it and didn't come back. But I think Ash will really like this one. That's my husband. It's basically just a novelized version of Skyrim, set in a Norse-inspired world. And it was fine for Norse fantasy, perfectly cromulent. It was just, I forgot I was reading it. But I think Ash will like it. So I saw the second one cheap on Kindle. Ash prefers to read exclusively on Kindle, and that's fine. So if I see this first one cheap, I'll grab it too for him. He also will only read a series if it's finished, because he was horribly burned by Robert Jordan dying. So now he doesn't trust anyone. I grabbed that one. I'm not going to tell you the blurb of the second one because it will be spoilers for the first, but I will tell you about the first one. I mean, I basically just did tell you about the first one. It says, set in a brand new Norse-inspired world and packed with myth, magic and bloody vengeance, the Shadow of the Gods begins an epic new fantasy saga. Like, it tells you nothing. Yeah, from what I read, it is basically just a Skyrim vibes. That is it, short and sweet. It is the 1st of December when this video comes out, and so in the next week, 2 books which I've pre-ordered are coming out, and then I will be busy bee. So actually I really want to have read Papyrus by the time that Brandon Sanderson book comes out, which from the time I'm recording is I think 2 weeks. No, 1 week. I'll try my best. But also I've got to kill super mutants. So where was I? Thank you for hanging out with me. Let me know what you're reading. Are you going to read this Brandon Sanderson that's coming? Are you also having what the fuck vibes about Midnight in Chernobyl? Let me know. Bye.